Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Joining us now is Robert X. Johnson, and he is someone who has a lot of experience at the grassroots level. And as you've heard me say many times before, I think we are too caught up with trying to fix things at the very top. I think we need to understand how to do things at the state level. We need to understand what our power is with state nullification. We need to understand what our power is with jury nullification. And we need to understand what we can do at the local grassroots level to affect electoral reform. So joining us now is Robert X. Johnson. He was a former state parliamentarian for the Republican Party back in 1995. He was delegate and activist from 1988 to 2010. He had a stroke in 2011, and he backed out of the heavy activism. But he's back now to advise us on specifically what we can do at the local level, and also to give us kind of a overview of what we're really trying to do here. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Give us an idea of where you see this going. And as we talked a little bit before the interview, the bigger picture before we get into some details that people can do at the local level.
In my observations of politics generally, people like to look to the top only. They want this guy for president, that guy for president, or they look at what can we do with like constitutional conventions. And all of that is fine, but it'll never really work. It never seems to work. If you only cry out for a king or only look at the top, it seems that you're always betrayed just shortly thereafter. I mean,
well, I think the government has gotten so large, so intrusive, that I don't think any one person can even control it. We have so many different bureaucracies that are involved at local levels. And of course, at the federal level, I should say, that have basically become a law and a little kingdom to themselves.
It's a
difficult thing even for one individual to do that. And when we put all of our energy into just trying to get a guy elected for president, and if that's the only thing that we're concerned about, we don't pay any attention to what's happening at the local level where we can have far more leverage, that is a failed strategy, a failed tactic.
And that's kind of why I agreed to come in today, is because the strategy of bottom up is truly essential, even if your desire is top down.
Yeah.
A top down strategy really won't bring any fruit until you have a bottom up strategy to go with it.
Well, we've had the left always say, think globally, act locally. And I think we need to understand what's going on globally. We need to understand what's going on nationally. But we understand that where the rubber meets the road, where you really need to take action if you're going to change things, is at the local level.
That's exactly right. A lot of people just don't realize it because it seems like it's picayune or too small. Mm-hmm. But a precinct convention is actually more powerful than Congress and the Senate and the president. Because the fourth clause of the First Amendment, you got freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Most people don't realize the fourth one, freedom of assembly, that is political parties. And the rules of that's what I'm an expert in, is rules. The rules of a political party are dominant over state law, when appropriate, over state constitutions, and even federal law, because those rules are literally freedom of assembly. The Fong case in 1988, and again another case in 2000, the Supreme Court made the ruling clearly. A political party is independent of the state's authority to control it. How can you have freedom of assembly if the state or the federal government is controlling it? Mm-hmm. So we take their money in political parties so they get some control, but the state has the burden of proving overriding state interest to monkey around. One example is, for example, we could pass at a party rule level with 1 or 2% of the population, our voting population, a rule on term limits, and we can term limit out all incumbents. They couldn't run in the primary. That would, because of gerrymandering, you're pretty much going to wipe out all the Republicans, or if you took over their Democrat Party, all the Democrats. Abraham Lincoln was term limited out of office from the Whig Party after one term in Congress because that's what the Whig Party rules said. Yeah. There was no law that required him to leave.
You don't have to go through this complicated amendment to the Constitution or a constitutional convention. You can just do it at the party level. Say, we're going to have term limits. That's it.
And for like the rhino problem, you could pass a rule at a state convention that creates censure, which means punishment. You know, you're a bad guy. I think you're a rhino. You're against the ideals of our platform. you are now prohibited from running in our party. That's it. They're out of office. They're done. It eliminates the rhino problem. So this gives you the opportunity with very small numbers to take over the Congress, the Senate, the State House, the State Senate, the governorships. Party rules can bring discipline to party platforms. Right now, a party platform is a meaningless document. Nobody reads it. Nobody cares.
That's right.
But just 50 years ago, the first thing you did was say, I agree to support the platform, therefore I'm eligible to run. There is no system of rules or design of politics that is safe from the conniving activity of liars, cheaters, and stealers. The Bull Moose Party, back then everything was machine run, and so they changed the rules to make it primary run. But now primaries are controlled by money and gerrymandering and all kinds of avarice. So you just keep changing things. In the Declaration of Independence, it tells you the purpose of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to secure governments for our people. But it is the right, it is the duty of the people to change the forms, the rules, so they may secure. And then at the end of the last sentence of the Declaration of Independence basically says, to this cause we pledge our lives, our honor, our stake, our prosperity, everything. That's what's missing today. Bottom up, you have to realize the lowest boring level of a precinct convention, you go to a senatorial convention and you fight to become a state delegate. And if we have, I would think about 65% of the delegates, we can pretty much change the world in as little as 1 to 2 elections.
I absolutely agree with you. I've been involved, not with the Republican Party, but I've been involved with the Libertarian Party back in North Carolina in 1992. We had a very vibrant party that one year. We had a larger state convention than the Republican Party did. And I've covered many events, both as a videographer and as a reporter, also as a participant. I know just how difficult it is to get people to show up to a political process. Very few people show up. I remember going to a political activity where there was nobody there but the candidates, a couple of their representatives, and that was basically it. Nobody from the public showed up. So it is a very powerful tool that is just laying there, I think, like jury nullification, that if people understood what was there, if they had the knowledge, because they don't have the knowledge, our people perish, right?
Exactly.
If they understood the power that is just laying there on the table.
Well, people
with a small number of people, they could come in and they could take over this convention and they could actually restore integrity to the process. As you pointed out, they could institute things like term limits, censure to get rid of people who violate the principles that are in the party platform. We fought in the Libertarian Party over every little word in this complicated platform. I mean, that was a long process. And then the guys would, agree to that. If they didn't agree to it, they were out. I mean, you want to talk about a convention that is, they're talking about with the Republican convention, the old style convention we used to have back in the 50s and 60s. I mean, I saw that. I was a part of that process. I know that when it is small like that and you've got activists involved, that can happen. It still can happen.
Yes, people don't like to waste their time. So the strategists that we have on the national scene today keep talking top down. They only talk about grandiose ideas. If everybody follows me, we can save the world. Well, you know what? Basically, they're right. If everybody would follow them, they could save the world. Unfortunately, people aren't stupid. They know their ideas coming from the top just really don't work. And there's a lot of guys saying, follow me, follow me, follow me. What I'm trying to say is if we give the people a plausible plan to go from the bottom to the top, that's something everybody can get behind. That's how you get unity.
Yeah.
And without that unity, we are just we're always fighting the same battles. And I think you pointed out in our posting review, corruption is everywhere. The bad guys are doing their job. They're bad.
Yeah.
They will cheat at every level. So we can't teach people, or at least I can't, teach people, let's cheat also and maybe we'll win. No, the second you go down the dark side, you're on the dark side. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the problem. We need, I don't know how many
it doesn't
percent of the electorate.
To have a constitutional convention, to have new shiny new amendments. If the people who are swearing to the Constitution right now have absolutely no interest in following it, they know they can violate it with immunity. We have a problem of criminals in Washington. We
That's
don't have
happening
a problem
now.
with an insufficient Constitution. If we tried it, and we were doing our best to follow the Constitution. We had people of integrity who abided by their oath. We could look at it and we could say, okay, nothing is perfect. We need to adjust it here. We need to adjust it there. But until we get to the situation where we have people who are willing to have integrity, to abide by their word, to abide by their oath to the Constitution, and actually implement what we have there, which is really a pretty good plan, then I don't think it makes any sense to start trying to give the tools to this criminal class and tell them, okay, change everything.
Yeah, if we have amoral people at the top, there'll still be the same problem.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change by writing more words on paper and say.
What they'll wind up doing is give themselves plausible deniability.
They'll just reinterpret the words.
Exactly. And they will, right now, we can look at this stuff and we can say, you know what? The Constitution says this, I can read it. You're doing this other thing here. You have no authority, okay? You're without authority because you're outside the limits of the law. You violated your oath or whatever. But if they change this, okay, so that now they can engage in their criminal tricks, then they have essentially, we have lost a lot when we lose the moral authority of the law.
The criminal class always claims they have the authority because they have the guns.
Mm-hmm.
They are in charge of the machinery of enforcement. And I think you can go back to Confucius that said, when words lose their meaning, men lose their liberty, which is the truth. So we can't write enough words on paper to get the bad guys to be good. They're just not going to be good. They're going to just reinterpret the words.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Article 5, the last clause talks about or the first sentence says, Congress shall call a convention of the states. The word call in parliamentary terms could be interpreted to mean they'll chair it, they'll call it, they'll set the agenda, and they'll decide what it means when it's over.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they could just take that one word, which should be just a simple call to a parliamentarian. That just means send out notice, let's get together. But if they choose to interpret it differently, everything is lost.
Oh, yeah. Look at what they did with the General Welfare Clause. The way they
or the Commerce Clause.
Yeah, the Commerce Clause, another example.
Well, the 17th Amendment is a great example. Technically, any president at any time can declare it null and void. The last clause of Article 5, last sentence is, no state shall be denied equal suffrage in the Senate. Okay, a state always has the meaning in the Constitution to mean the government of a state.
Mm-hmm.
So the 17th Amendment is null and void on its face because it stripped all states of their suffrage in the federal government. So we have an amendment and say, let's fix this. Why? We don't need an amendment. Just declare it null and void. It is null and void. It violates the very amendment clause that it used to become ratified. So it did get ratified, but it's null and void on its face. It just takes someone with the balls to stand up and say it's null and void. And there we go. We fixed that one. Term limits, simple party rule, and you can term limit all these incumbents out. If you do it to one party, I guarantee you we'll have a constitutional amendment and it'll eventually apply to both parties pretty darn quick. So you could fix a lot from the bottom up. And then when you replace the criminal class, then if you have constitutional amendments top down like Mark Levin's ideas or some other great guy that has some ideas as well, then those ideas might work because the criminal class is gone. And if you have some decent people at the top level, they'll say, oh, these are the new rules. Let's follow them.
Yeah, no Constitution is self-enforcing. Let's talk about what we can do at the local level. Give people some ideas of how they can get involved at the state level, because it's a lot easier. One of the reasons why people get so involved at the very top level, and we're part of it because we're a national organization, we will focus on the presidential races because they're discussing issues. And it's important to discuss these issues, to see the different ideas that are being put out there, regardless of whether we agree with these candidates or not. So it's easy to get a lot of information about what's going on in the presidential race or what's going on in the national campaigns. It's very difficult to get information at the local level as to what to do. So tell people how they can get information, how they can get involved at the local level.
Well, right now, I would recommend your listeners get involved with this movement by Mark Levin because they've already got a good groundswell going. But they need to bring the message that there needs to be a complementary bottom-up strategy, which means attend your precinct convention on primary night, become a delegate to a senatorial convention, and fight to become a delegate to a state convention.
How do you become a delegate?
Basically, at the precinct level, you just show up. And
Yeah, because as we said, nobody shows up.
nobody shows up. When I go to my precinct convention, I'm lucky if there's 2 people there.
That's right.
Usually me and my wife.
Okay.
And
So if you show up, how do you find out where this is and when it is?
it's all part of a little package they hand you on precinct convention night. The precinct convention in Texas is on primary night. And in most states, that's the way it is. Not all states. Some states do caucuses and different things. So learn your local rules, because I know your show is more than just Texas.
Yeah.
Learn the local rules. Go to
Google, maybe look at what the state party is saying. They'll give you some dates as to where you can show up.
I'm still a Republican, so I like to see, because of what we don't control, I think we could capture the machinery of one of the political parties pretty quick, like the Republican Party. I think 2 to 3% participation, and you've got it. Pat Robinson in '88, I think he wound up taking 2/3, 3/4 of the state machinery. The other side, of course, recognizing the threat, Tea Party threat, Christian right threat, conservative threat, they see it as a threat. So they will cheat to the max to stop any effectiveness. That's to be expected. They're the bad guys.
Yeah.
Our side just needs to keep showing up, persevere, keep learning, become the delegate at the first level, get eventually. The prize is not somebody passing a resolution. That's patronizing. Resolutions typically just wind up in the trash. Someone might look at them or glance at them as they're building platforms, then the platform's thrown in the trash. Right now, the goal is delegates. You want to be a delegate to the precinct convention, then a delegate to the second level, which is usually a middle level. In Texas, it's called the senatorial level, sometimes a county convention. But the goal is become a delegate to the state convention. At the state convention, it is a deliberative assembly with the power to write rules. From those rules, you can control the primary. If you control the primary in a gerrymandered world, that's an assumption that people understand gerrymandering. Mm-hmm. But in a gerrymandered world, you're controlling the on-ramp to power. They can run as
in order for these rules to get passed, though, you're going to have enough people at that convention with you with the same common goal to change the leadership of the convention, or they're just going to table your efforts, right?
That's right. They will cheat at every level.
Yeah.
In '96, I basically passed all these rules at the rules committee at a state convention. Got to the floor. I was very happy. I passed pretty much everything I wanted. And they shut the convention down because I made the mistake of not taking over the convention chair. Yeah. So you have to recognize they will cheat at every level.
Yes,
that's
tremendous
the bad
amount of
guys
power at the chair. So you got to have a critical mass there, that state convention, to make sure you control that chair, or you're not going to be able to get anything running through. I mean, we've seen
they'll
that
cheat
happening all the time in Congress.
In Nevada, they cheated. I think you mentioned Oregon. And every time conservatives win, the old guard simply cheats. Mm-hmm. And what you have to have is so many delegates. I think about 65% would be a number to shoot for, mm-hmm. that you can overwhelm the convention process, because they'll cheat at credentials, which is before the chairman vote. They'll cheat at every level. They'll cheat.
Well, of course, I've seen that when they have petitions that you have to, as a third party, every time you have to go through a petition process to try to get on the ballot. And everybody knows that if you've got 10,000 signatures that you need for the petition, you're going to need to get 20 or 30,000 petitions.
Because they'll disqualify a bunch of them.
They're going to go through and disqualify them for the most minor things. Anybody that's remembers the hanging Chad.
The hanging Chad. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, they will go through and literally pick every nit that is on this form, anything that anybody signed. They will throw it out. So, yeah, you're right. Because of credentials and other things, you're going to have a 65% majority, so that you can even get a simple majority. You're going to have to use that simple majority to get control of the chair. Then you can really now you've got the levers of power.
Right. Once you control the chair and you've gotten past credentials and you do have a working majority, you can change the world. Mm-hmm. And we're talking changing the world with 2 or 3% of the electorate.
Yes.
And that's the secret here. Understanding the fact that currently we have the numbers to take over literally every Republican Party in the country. What a lot of people don't realize, because of gerrymandering, we have the numbers to take over every Democratic convention in the country. We have the numbers. We just don't have the unity or a strategic unifying force. And that's the problem with top-down strategy. They say, ooh, look at if we just do this, they'll have to be good. No, bad guys, like you said, the criminal class will never be good because we wrote something down on a piece of paper.
Liberty is never given. It must be taken.
That's right.
We are not going to be, to also quote another founder, we're not going to be transported to a state of liberty on a featherbed. We are going to have to be involved, just like earning a living. You have to go out and earn a living. You have to earn your liberty. You have to earn the benefits of living in a country that has a rule of law. And when we have a criminal class, the only way that we're going to stop this is by taking over. But people are always looking at this and saying, what can we do? It's so frustrating. And I say, well, look, you got an 8% solution in the juries. Of course, there's a lot of tricks that are done by judges and by attorneys to throw people off of juries. But if you had one person out of 12, jury nullification can shut that down. If there's laws that are unjust or punishments that are excessive, they can shut that down, even if the facts of the case are there. And we've seen that numerous times.
Well, jury nullification is one of the built-in safety nets to our constitutional federalistic republic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yes, if there was education, people understood their role as a member of a jury, they could certainly fix a lot of things. Freedom of assembly is another constitutional check.
And that's very important because we talk about the jury box, we talk about the ballot box, and so many people are frustrated about the electoral process. How do we change this electoral process? And you're talking about a system where instead of like 1 out of 12 people, 8%, we only need 2 to 3% to do this. And as you know, as I've seen, nobody shows up at these situations. If you show up, you win. Well, if you understand when and where to go, you win. If you get your neighbors together, you can win. It's a much easier path. We need to exhaust the jury box and the ballot box solutions before we turn to the cartridge box. And we haven't even tried those two solutions. It's way too early for us to get to the cartridge box.
It's kind of poetic that the First Amendment came before the Second Amendment. You're right. I think it's still a little early for the cartridge box, but freedom of assembly is the latent power no one talks about. In these party rules ideas, we've done it. In 1988, 1990, we had more people showing up at these things. It was easy to take over conventions, but nobody knew what to do with it. That's where I started studying this process because it seemed like our leaders, and back then it was Christian right, Ralph Reed and some other types, they seemed to have been bought off pretty quick. Like with Enron went down, Ralph Reed was receiving, I don't know, huge tens of thousands of dollars every month from them because he was bought off. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were transferred from bad guys to good guys. You follow the money, you see money trails everywhere. So our leaders had a fundamental problem of not having any idea what to do with the power they just gained. But they had the goal, a seat at the table. Who cares about a seat?
That's very important if you want to get paid off, if you're looking to.
Yeah, that's all that it turned out to be was payoff.
Your political career. Yeah.
And so every year I watched hundreds of new people come into the process while hundreds others were leaving in disgust because nothing righteous was ever being done. What it was, they were always being asked to compromise. In other words, our leaders quickly turned to the dark side, and they just wanted to continue to exercise political power.
Well, we do have people of integrity in politics now. They just don't have leadership. But there are plenty of people who have integrity there at the bottom. They get shut down by the people at the top. I mean, we just had a Democrat who came out talking about this authorization for the use of military force without restrictions on time or geography, giving this power to the president, essentially declaring, as he said, international martial law. This is a Democrat complaining about this process. So we have good people. We have good people in both parties, especially on individual issues. Nevertheless, I think that it's important for us to get involved at these state conventions like you're talking about. When you're at the convention and you've got a small number of people, that's the time you can really vet these people better than any other time.
That's when you can always talk about
Iowa and New Hampshire, where it's retail politics. You get to shake the person's hand, you get to look them in the eye, you get to talk to them and ask them questions. And when you've got a small convention, and I saw this with the Libertarian Party, you can get to know somebody. You can find out where this person is coming from. You can make a much better judgment about their moral character. You never know for sure about anybody, and they can always change, but you can make a much better judgment than you can from looking at a canned television commercial or a YouTube commercial. Okay, that's where you can have the information and the intelligence about where these people are. That's where you can identify people of integrity.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things good guys do is fight and squabble over every little thing. And so when you're judging each other, see, our first primary goal to get us to have some effectiveness is unity. And the forms of our republic are what we should be unifying about, not whether it's, a border issue, a pro-life issue, a gun issue. When you look at the Declaration of Independence, it actually spells out a plan, and it says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that when any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. This is what I'm talking about. The forms can change. Every legislator in this country is a deliberative assembly, which translates easily to the wisdom of many counselors. Their goal is to produce wisdom in a republic under federalistic ideas to decide what's best for the whole of society. Under Madison and these guys were biblical scholars. They understood these principles. Even the declaration of war is a separation of power.
Yes.
The Levites weren't allowed to draw blood on the battlefield. Congress usually isn't the guy swinging the sword. He does prosecute the war, but they anoint the generals and the kings, and they declare the war.
The thing they were most concerned about was consolidation.
Yes, they didn't like power in all of one's hand.
Exactly. And so when you're talking about the forms of government, and we look at what's happening with executive orders, we've had politicians on both the left and the right, the Republicans and Democrats, saying, if we're going to abandon the process that's in the Constitution and just let a president run these executive orders, we are creating a Caesar, and we are destroying the very form of government that we have.
Tyranny by executive order.
Exactly.
And I guess that's the goal of this interview, is to try to tell people that, yes, you have a direct personal responsibility to show up at your precinct convention, become a delegate, and move forward. Plug into a group, influence that group, and we will do what we can. I'll do what I can to get more details on how all this works. But get plugged in, because at the state convention level, you got to persevere. Stay every 2 years. You go to these conventions and look at your district. And what we're aiming for is change things from the bottom up, make men accountable to the words on the paper.
And we have to go back and reclaim the form of government which we have laid out in the Constitution. And people, regardless of where you stand on an issue, the fact that we're going to either have a constitutional process or whether we're going to be run by a dictator, that's what people need to look at. In other words, whether or not you agree with the gun control measures that Obama is putting out, you have to agree that the process is destroying our rule of law. And so that's
rule of law is a powerful concept, and I don't know
whether you're pro-gun or anti-gun. You need to understand this process is going to enslave you. Put aside this issue for a moment and understand what's being done to the process. If we have the process, then we can go back and we can talk about the issue. But we have to restore these foundations of government, the foundations of the rule of law.
Absolutely. Like, there's so many ways to cheat. I just called all legislative bodies deliberative assemblies, but most people don't realize every deliberative assembly is abusive, corrupt, and cheats. The seniority system is a form of cheating. My state representative is equal to your state representative. Why then, if yours has been in office 4 years longer, does he have more power?
Yeah.
That's the whole point. In a deliberative assembly, the members of the assembly are supposed to be equal. Why do you give rulemaking power to your chair? Why does he decide what gets on the calendar's agenda? Why do why are caucuses not paid attention? There's all kinds of ways to cheat. And gerrymandering is a form of cheating. Biblically, it says the enemy creates snares and then traps themselves. That's what I'm about. Yeah. Everything they've done, we can reverse in short order from the bottom up. But if you, the listener, don't realize at the bottom of the Declaration of Independence says, and for this support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's what's missing.
Yes.
The average person needs to realize it's your responsibility to get involved and stay involved to achieve a goal of restoring the rule of law, the forms of our republic, and do what you can with the tools that are given to us: freedom of assembly, ballot box, top down, bottom up. They're all tools we've been given. unless you were waiting till it gets so bad that the only option is the cartridge box.
Yeah, unless we have a war. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that too, but boy, it's going to be bad, I think, before people are ready to die over it.
Well, you know, there's never been a revolution, as far as I know, except for the American Revolution, where things didn't get far worse. And so we don't want to go that way. We have the tools there. We understand the forms. We need to recapture those forms. Thank you so much, Robert X. Johnson, former state parliamentarian. You know what the rules are. You know that the power is laying there on the table. It is there for people to use, and it is a shame for us to say we're not going to be bothered in understanding what our rights are as jurors, understanding what our rights are with these assemblies to take back the form of the rule of law. We need to take back this at the grassroots level, not be completely focused at the top level. And I think that's a very powerful message. This is something that we can all do. We have to understand that just as you have to earn a living for yourself, for your family, you have to earn your freedom. And there are ways that you can do that. There is a path besides the frustration that we all feel. We see the problems that are there. We understand how this country is coming apart, but there is a path to that. Thank you so much, Robert X. Johnson.
Well, thanks for having me.
Shane Steiner's involvement with InfoWarsLife.com truly happened in an organic way. I went to high school with Shane, his brother, knew his parents well, and he was visiting the office once, hadn't been to the office in years, and said, wow, I noticed you're making and selling supplements. Do these really work? Because I've tried a lot of supplements as a workout enthusiast, and I really think most of them are hype. And I said, here, take some home, try it. Well, a few weeks later, he came in blown away and said, I want to buy 3 boxes of this stuff to give my friends and family. It's simply amazing. He said, why does it work so well? And I said, listen, go to InfoWarsLife.com, watch the informational videos with Dr. Group and others. They understand how it all works. I know that it works for me. That's all I understand. The science, the facts, the research, people's testimonials, they're all on InfoWarsLife.com. You can check it out for yourself.
I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to push myself and work out harder, and that led to me being able to come out and do stuff like the barefooting and the surfing and stuff like that, which I would have never done. I never would have done that 2 years ago.
Shane has said over and over again, more than just libido and energy, it made him want to get into the gym more. It made him want to get in better shape. And believe me, the Steiners have amazing genetics. His brother is a world champion steer wrestler. His dad, Bobby Steiner, is a famous world champion bull rider. They've got natural genetics. But when you added this to the mix, in Shane's own words, it took him to the next level. Shane noticed the mental clarity. Bobby was able to work out longer and gain muscle mass. He's already completely shredded. I gotta admit, for me, the biggest effect has been libido. Now, I've never claimed to have a body like some beach model, but back when I was 20, 22 years old and worked out every day, I looked great. But over the years, and being married, having 3 kids, and working 18 hours a day, I gained basically 100 pounds. And it's been a long process losing that weight in the last 4 years. But if you look at the photos and the videos of what I looked like 4 or 5 years ago versus today, the results are dramatic. I'd already cleaned up my diet. I was working out hard, but I'd only lost about 20 pounds. It was adding the other key ingredients from InfoWarsLife.com that helped me personally go to the next level and shed another 35 pounds.
This has actually made me feel so good that here lately, about a year ago, I started training jiu-jitsu, and that kind of led to doing some boxing and kickboxing. I mean, it's amazing that 2 years ago, I was on the couch and couldn't even tie my shoes, and now I'm training with MMA fighters and just doing stuff that I never thought that I would be doing ever again. So Super Male Vitality has allowed me to do some amazing things, and if it has those kind of effects for me, I know that it will do great things for you. So just try Super Male Vitality. I promise you, you'll love it.
And finally, let's look at Anthony Gucciardi, Infowars.com reporter. He also works with Dr. Group and others, helping develop the newest, most cutting-edge, high-quality supplements. Let's take a look at what happened when he tried to barefoot ski for the first time with the Steiners. And remember, we're not making fun of him. He had the will to get in the arena, and he's lost more than 10 pounds in the last few years of fat and gained more than 10 pounds of muscle. And Anthony chalks it up to Super Male Vitality as well. Bottom line, folks, you want to discover the power of super male vitality and super female vitality for yourself by visiting InfoWarsLife.com today or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.